Hey guys, I wanted to do a little video today on, well, it might not be a little video, but who knows, with me, it's always like an entire saga of 30 minutes, but I'll try to keep it as concise as I can. But I want to talk a little bit about trauma and OCD because I think it's something that I think it always needs talking about. I think it's something that a lot of people may have also some misconceptions about as well. So I wanted to, as someone who has experienced trauma myself, like I wanted to cover that in just some of my experience with going through it and how that related to my OCD journey. But before I go on, please subscribe to the channel, let us know what you think, and if you need to come in for one-to-one coaching sessions, we have our link below down in the description. You can click that and you can inquire and sign up for one-to-one sessions with us, or come to one of our webinars. So I think in total I have been through 3 to 4 traumatic events in my life, and I say 3 to 4 because there's one or two which are, I think it's also like based on how you personally want to define it, or how someone that you're speaking to also kind of like defines it for you. I think with one or two of them, like in having that conversation with one of my therapists earlier, I think they termed it as traumatic, and because it had that very high stress kind of impact on me, and it had very like profound influence over my life. So in that sense, like the definition of what you like can or want to call a trauma or not, like it can also like vary based off of your own personal kind of how you personally want to frame it as well a little bit. So there's some things that I think with experiencing sexual abuse, for example, that's a straightforward, like, okay, yeah, that's a traumatic event. But then there are other things as well that I did not at least recognize as trauma myself, but then I was kind of like told that, yeah, this is easily like traumatic as well because of the way it played into my life and how it really affected me. And I think that when you go through a traumatic event, especially like the first time that you go through it, because the level of stress and anxiety and just this immense amount of like discomfort that you feel is like sky high, it sets the standard of what horrible and terrible is in your life, because you have never experienced that sort of intense feeling ever before. I think I distinctly still remember how it felt right in the moment, and like literally right the moment after the sexual abuse incident. Like it's a feeling that I can't even describe. Like it was just so, like I was saturated in that feeling head to toe. Like I did not know what happened. I could not make sense of it. I didn't know what I was feeling. And the next, I would say, even few days, at least from what I can remember, because some of the days after that are kind of like blurry as well. It just like it's a bit of a blur. But I think easily the next week, I was just on autopilot. I felt like a bit of a shell. I felt like a bit of a zombie. Obviously, like no clue what it was that had happened and how to make sense of it. But I think once that standard of high distress and anxiety is set, it it becomes very naturally as a human response. That's exactly what it becomes kind of like a goal in life to never experience anything ever that makes you feel that level of high anxiety and distress in life. And whatever other negative emotions, whether it's guilt and shame or regret or sadness or depression, whatever emotions you want to bring into the mix. But essentially, that's the sky high level that you want to kind of like avoid at all costs for the rest of your life, right? So when you bring OCD into the mix, every trigger feels just as intense as that past traumatic response. Um, I had so many triggers in my OCD journey. both and like with all themes, I would say, that felt like in my body, at least, they felt just as intense as that initial traumatic experience. And for me, that's what just like completely consumed me in my analysis of what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. I because I felt like, and these were my own words at the time that I was explaining to. I don't know who I was saying it to. Maybe I think I was saying this to my therapist at the time. I said, like, every single trigger that I experience with OCD just feels as intense as that initial incident of trauma, and therefore I feel like I am reliving my trauma with every single trigger that happens. And I had multiple triggers a day, to be honest. So it was like I was living, breathing trauma on a daily basis. That's how it was conceptualized in my mind. And it felt, and that's where the injustice of it all, also I felt the injustice of it all, because it was like, why do I have to re-experience that event through feeling over and over and over again on a daily basis? Like, and that's what also kept me in the cycle of feeling hopeless and stressed as well, because I thought, like, am I ever going to escape that? And there was obviously there was kind of like a bitter fixation that I had on that initial traumatic event as well, because I was like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be experiencing this like on a daily basis, over and over again. But the thing is that, um, because I had experienced that, and then anything I experienced that was equally just as stressful or came close to that level of stress, to me, like, I wasn't looking at those things like separately. That okay, this is also stress and this is also stress. For me, it was like, oh, this is all related to this, all related to this, all related to this. And like the trigger coming up, oh, I'm feeling this level of trigger because, oh, I experienced trauma and this is the exact feeling that's replicated. Oh, I'm feeling this because it was trauma. So I was linking each and every single thing back to trauma, and therefore I think that's exactly what made me feel stuck and hopeless, because I was like, everything is related to trauma. Even just me having a normal happy conversation with someone is somehow driven by trauma. Like, it was so related to it, and I became, in my mind, I defined myself by trauma itself and all the other like traumatic events I had experienced as well. I mean, I became that representative character in that, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way, because like every time that you experience something, you can easily link it back to the past. But if I also like flip the narrative of that, let's say there's a super happy event that I experience at some point in life, right? But then every single high, happy experience that I feel, I'm not linking it back to, oh, this is exactly what that high, that initial happy feeling was. I'm not linking it back to the past over and over again and thinking that, oh, this is that exact happy feeling replicated. I'm seeing all those happy instances individually, and I'm thinking, oh, this is also another happy, enjoyable instance, and this is that, and this is that. So why was I doing that with like all my instances of anxiety and lumping them all into like, oh, this is all related to trauma, right? Because and at some point I had that realization, and I was like, what am I doing to myself? Because I'm essentially then, just how I'm conceptualizing it, I'm the one who's then making myself stuck in this narrative of, oh, I have trauma brain, and now I'm stuck in this entire entire world of trauma. Like I was doing that for myself because of how I was conceptualizing it and how I was defining my own self and my life by trauma, because it felt like a burden I now have to carry this. I have to now like carry the scars of this like for the rest of my life, and this is what I am defined by. I wasn't just Momin, I was Momin the trauma survivor, right? Like, and that's something that felt kind of gross. Like, to be honest, like it felt kind of gross. Like I did not want to be that. um but no one else was doing it to me. I was doing it to myself, just how I was thinking about it. And I really had to change that, because and there were so many different ways that I had to essentially like recalibrate how I thought about it. Well, number one was I had to see trauma or their traumas that I had as part of my life and not definitive of me. And it was really up to me if I define myself by them or not. Because if I am linking each and every single behavior, every single trigger, every single uncomfortable event back to me being abused or me going through an emotionally abusive relationship or anything else that I experience in life, then I don't have any hope of not feeling like the victim. I'm going to continue to feel like the victim, and I'm going to feel helpless and almost like completely just submitted to like the negative things in my life. I'm not going to. I wasn't going to take any charge of my life, so I had to see it not as my life, but as part of my life, a big, significant part of my life. Because I mean, those experiences also, and this is what I also say to people. And I know it sounds kind of like strange and a little corny as well, but it's very hard to say that, oh, I want to go back in time and I want to change those things, because I don't know. I think if some of those things had not happened, I also would not be a lot of it. I won't be the person I am today, and I like the person I am today. I want to be the person I am today. So I'm not sure. Like, it's a very hard thing to. It's. I mean, I mean, if I really had the option and sat and thought about it, maybe I would. I might end up choosing going back and changing it. But what I'm saying is that it's not an easy decision. It's not like an instinctive thing of like, oh, I wish I could change it. So that took a while, first of all, and it was also a little unsettling, to be honest, when I initially started to be like, okay, if I just see this as just a part of my life and not my whole self or not my entire life, then what does my life look like outside of it? It was a little unsettling because for years I had just seen my life in the color of trauma. So to see life and myself outside of it was like, what does that even mean for me? Like, where do I go from this? If I don't define myself by this, then what do I define myself by? So it's like a mini like existential crisis of who am I outside of this? But it's a really good, important, significant question to ask yourself as well. Like, who are you outside of your trauma? Number two is also then, I think a lot of my behaviors were being driven by I don't want to experience trauma again. So me even avoiding my exposures, me avoiding in terms of contamination, at least me avoiding my touching surfaces and things like that. A lot of it was driven by I don't want to experience trauma again, because if I do make myself experience those traumatic feelings again, then I am being unfair and unjust to myself. That I think that sense of justice and fairness and deservingness towards myself was one of the, like, a really huge driving factor in my compulsions. It wasn't just about I don't want to experience discomfort and it feels really uncomfortable and scary, so I don't want to feel it. It was also coming from this very strong sense of I need to do good by myself. And because bad things have happened to me out of my own volition, so I have to be the one to look out for myself and look after myself and make sure that I don't experience anything bad like that again. So let me just fix the camera a little bit. So I think part of doing exposures and cutting my compulsions was not just about um, it wasn't just about okay, let's experience discomfort. I mean, of course that was a huge part of it. I have to face my fear, I have to face discomfort and those things, but it also came from this really big belief and this mindset that okay, if doing an exposure means I'm doing something unjust and unfair to myself by putting myself through those traumatic feelings, okay, then let's be unjust and unfair to myself. And it was like, even just thinking about it, it sounds crazy, but it was so unsettling to be, your own destroyer in a way, like to be the one to destroy yourself. And that's how it felt, like at least initially when I was doing my exposures. um because I wasn't, I mean, yes, I had some fears of rejection from other people here and there, and those were at times really strong. But I think at times when I look back, I think at times the stronger fear of rejection I had was a rejection towards my own self. That if I do something that makes me reject myself and really dislike myself, then how can I even live with myself? If I don't like myself, everyone else can hate me, and or everyone else can like me, but at the end of the day, if I don't like being in my own skin, and if I can't even face myself, then then I have nothing. And that was my line of thinking at the time. So I think again, especially when you've been through a traumatic event where you feel like your sense of self has been dismantled by someone else or something else or some external outside force, I think it can become, it's very easy to then go on this entire lifelong crusade of standing up for yourself. And again, I'm not saying that like you can't ever stand up for yourself in life ever. But what I'm saying is that you have to be able to hold that notion with a little bit of a flexibility. I'm not like, I don't let people trample over me, but at the same time, like, I'm also not like, no one ever must cross me, like, kind of thing. And I mean, look, I was in that mindset for a very long time, for many years in between. I became, from being a complete yes person and a complete people pleaser, I became a complete no person and a people displeaser, if that's a word. So I went from one extreme to the other, and I think now in life I'm somewhere in the middle. That, I mean, yes, I still go along with things that sometimes people say, or but also equally I say no or whatever when I want to. It's that kind of thing. So, and it was a big learning curve. In some ways, I'm glad I experienced both extremes, because going on both extremes also taught me that the middle ground is better, because this is also not healthy, but also this is not healthy either. Because you end up alienating a lot of people in your life and upsetting a lot of people in your life, and it's not, a lot of times it's not worth it to say no. And it's more worth saying yes as well. So the middle ground, and you have to see things situation by situation as well. It's not a blanket no or yes to things. Like, you have to evaluate and play by ear. It's not like a playbook of, oh, if this situation occurs, then it's always a no. No, sometimes even in exceptional situations, you might have to say yes, and vice versa. So, where was I? I went on this entire tangent, but yeah, I think that, in again, that justice and injustice towards your own self, like I just started talking about it and then I went on a tangent, because it is like a very I think expansive topic. I even could have done a separate video on that as well. Actually, I did do a video on fear of self-rejection some time ago, so it's somewhere down in the playlist. You can maybe watch it. But so that I had to let go of that notion, and I had to again become my own destroyer in a way, and just see how that felt. And honestly, when once I did those things and whatnot, it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. And that's the case with exposures in general. Like, when you do them and when you start doing them and when you start facing your fears, they definitely don't feel as scary as they used to. In fact, sometimes I was like, wait, that's it? This is what I was afraid of for so many years, and I avoided this. I could have done this earlier. But of course, easier said than done once you've done it. Before you have even taken that step, it feels like the most impossible thing on planet Earth. Um, I think these are like a couple of really strong points that stood out for me when working on that kind of, like, again, sense of trauma. And I think the third thing as well is that looking for answers for OCD in trauma, and feeling like only and if you're able to overcome and resolve your trauma or heal your trauma is when you'll be able to overcome OCD. I think in my experience at least, I feel like you're going to do like a big disservice to yourself if you do that, because then you're going to be waiting to like feel okay with something that you might not completely feel okay with, and therefore you're going to then delay your own recovery journey as well. It's part of it is also accepting that you might not be able to fully feel at peace with what happened. For me personally, I think I've reached a place of like complete peace with whatever's happened in my life. Those were extremely unpleasant experiences, and those were very challenging, difficult times in my life. But I don't know. But I think I've only been able to come to a place of peace with them because, incidentally enough, because I was able to accept that I might not have peace with them ever. Because I think wanting to constantly feel okay, and like, I mean, I think when I was going for my early therapy years and trying to look into my past and my childhood and all these difficult things that had happened in my life, I was going in with the aim that this I need to find an emotional place that will feel like complete closure and resolve of everything that's happened. And once I'm able to reach that place, is when I'm going to truly overcome anxiety and not feel it like I do feel it. And that kept me. I was in that cycle for I think like a good 5 to 6 years where I was just analyzing my past to death. Like I was peeling back every single thread that I could. Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What does this mean about me as a person? How did this influence me? I need to find the exact emotional link between this incident and what I feel today. Like, it was this maddening kind of like mind map that I was going through, and it just it felt incredibly an impossible puzzle. Like just when you think that you've put in the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle, like you find, oh, there's like 10 other pieces just under the sofa. Now I have to collect them and put them into the mix somewhere as well. Like it just it was an impossible puzzle to figure out, and I think I had to like beyond a certain point, especially, I had to abandon that pursuit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to leave this puzzle unsolved and incomplete, because I can't keep going on forever just like analyzing my past over and over and over and over and over again. Like I had done that too much. So the more you're going to regurgitate your own past and keep talking about it over and over again and linking everything to the present to the past, the more you won't be able to escape that. I mean, I'm not saying that there's absolutely no utility in talking about the past. Of course, there is. And I think that, like, also going to therapy as well was me able to scratch that itch that I had about discussing my past, because before that, I was living in complete, like, trying to live in complete denial. Okay, nothing happened, bottling it up, don't want to like even confront it. Like I was living in that other extreme. So I think there was also there was an itch that I like, okay, I want to talk about this because this is way too much for me to carry around. So there was an initial, I would say, utility to it. And I think it just generally gave me a lot of insight about how some of these things can influence a human being. Like, again, I think the insight I have into how, let's say, sexual abuse can make someone feel has been incredibly helpful, to be honest, because and as a result of it, I've been able to speak to so many other friends that I later in my life found out, that I've known since childhood, to be honest, that I later found out were also sexually abused. And it was like a shocker because I thought, wait, what? Like, how did I not know this? But also makes complete sense now that I know this piece of information about you. It makes complete sense about so many other things that I've known about you this entire time. So it's, and I think being able to tell and share insights that I got from my therapy sessions with other sexual trauma survivors, I think has been one of the most meaningful and human and very like bonding experiences of my life, I think, in some ways. they've become some very important moments in a lot of my friendships, because it kind of like helped us relate to each other, bring us closer, have this kind of like transparency that we did not have before. So again, like, my point is not like don't ever look into the past and don't ever like even talk about the past at all. Like, it doesn't have to be to that extreme, but yes, I mean, beyond a certain point you do have to think about how much are you still harping on the past, how much are you still letting it define every single thing in the present moment, how much of your beliefs about life and everything from that time are still driving your life. Again, my beliefs were, oh, because I've experienced sexual abuse, now I don't ever want to let anyone take any advantage of me ever again. And that, again, that was an extreme way of thinking, because then at any point where even slightly felt like someone was using me or someone was trying to get some advantage out of me, I was just starting to see them as some kind of villain when they actually weren't being so. So it was really coloring my judgment as well, and it was coming from that belief that someone must not ever, like, use me or take advantage of me. Then also, I must always take a stand for myself, and I must always be fair and just to myself. I must not put myself through a situation where I am going to experience something so negative ever again. So I have to be the one responsible to myself. I must never reject myself. I must never experience chronic guilt and shame ever again. Again, the as it happens with a lot of like sexual abuse survivors, they experience really high levels of guilt and shame as a result of it. So I was feeling that too. So in my mind, I was like, okay, now I must never do anything ever that makes me feel guilt and shame. So even when it came to, maybe upsetting a friend's feelings, for instance, I felt that guilt and shame so bad, and I was like, oh shit, like, I'm feeling this. This must mean I am a bad person, and this must mean that it's real. Blah blah blah. So, um, that was another belief. What else? Like, yeah, I think it's also that I must get like things that I deserve. That was, I think, another big one as well. Um, yeah, I think those were some of the main beliefs. And again, I think also I must never experience traumatic feelings or feelings even similar to trauma ever again. That was also like a huge, huge, huge belief for me. I mean, like, whether something in the future ends up happening that is trauma or not, if I'm putting that demand on myself, then I'm just, again, setting up a trap for myself, because who knows, maybe I will go through something again, very intense and challenging in life that will take an emotional toll on me. Maybe I easily could. So if I'm putting that belief on myself, so I'm already making myself upset for something happening in the future. I'm making myself more upset about it than maybe I need to be in the first place. Because if something happens, and let's say it's a 9 out of 10 level of being upset, then I'm making it like a 15 out of 10 by thinking, oh, why am I experiencing that? I must not have experienced this in the first place. So so I think that thing that I must not experience traumatic feelings. And again, like I said, that was also driving my compulsive behaviors as well, my avoidance, my absolute hesitance to do exposures. It was doing all of that. So yeah, I think looking at those beliefs just really helped me for life in a way, and it really set me up for like, yeah, just accepting myself and the messiness of life itself. As corny as it sounds, like, really, I don't think I need to prove it to myself or to anyone else that my life needs to have a good track record. Maybe it doesn't. Like, I think the only track record I want to personally hold on to is my ability to deal with those challenges, not that the challenges should not happen in the first place. And also that's a that I can aim to have like a good track record of dealing with life challenges in the most whatever you want to call it, in the most like sensible way, or in the most like adaptable way. But I also know that I won't always be perfect, because there's going to be life challenges that I'm not prepared for. And like no like, if for example, if I'm diagnosed with cancer, for example, I don't know what the mental preparation for that is. So I might not be perfect with adapting to that challenge, but again, I'm also okay with that. But I want to try my best to have like a good track record of like dealing with life challenges. But that's all. Um, so, which is why I'm not entirely scared anymore of something bad happening. Um, I'm for me, it's more like, if something happens, I'm going to try the best to deal with it. I don't want to spend every living, breathing moment trying for that bad thing to not happen in my life. I don't want to live like that anymore. If it happens, I'll find a way. That's kind of like my life philosophy. If it happens, I'll find a way. So let's see what happens with that. So I hope you found this helpful. I think I was sitting down here to like trying to make a like just like any video about whatever came to my mind, but I don't know. I think it ended up being a very reflective video, more than I think initially planned in that way. So it's it's been a good video. I've enjoyed making this. I've enjoyed talking about this. I don't think I've made a video like this in a very long time. I think I've done another one on trauma and everything, but I think I did maybe like a year or something ago. But so yeah, this was a good little reflective half an hour piece. Like I said, you never know with me. I can go like 30 minutes long. But so there you have it. But if you have any questions, if you ever want to talk about this or whatever, come in for a one-to-one call, or just yeah, like pop in the comments as well, and let's see where we go. If you're in the WhatsApp groups, then I hope you enjoy this and you can ask me questions about this in the WhatsApp group as well. Guys, I will see you soon. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover. And yeah, bye. Have a good Sunday.